Of course, we really know how to pick them, don't we?
We haven't had snow yet.
2 out of 3 isn't bad. 1 out of 3 isn't
Okay,
bad.
so that's all I was going to do first is just welcome everybody. Patty?
Well, we have no officials to
No,
welcome.
Okay. Brian Michello was here, though.
I'm
And
sorry,
he presented
Brian.
us. He presented somebody with the certificate, so we have that. Okay.
Thank
So,
you,
First
Brian.
of all, a little bit of information about the Pomeroy Foundation.
I think we've all heard it.
We've all heard it.
2,600 of them. Over 49 states.
We got a feisty crowd here today, Sandy.
Wind is not my
Oh wait, Pat Hall's
Pomeroy
here.
Foundation is a private grant-making organization.
Should I acknowledge Pat Hall and you from the town, from the village? I'm acknowledging you. I'm acknowledging you as our government officials.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Oops. There we go.
Pomeroy
This is gonna be like-
Foundation is a private grant-making organization based in Syracuse, New York. It helps communities celebrate and preserve their history through the 6 different marker signage programs they offer. Since 2006, they've been helping communities celebrate their local history with premium cast aluminum markers. Starting with just 32 markers in Onondaga County, New York, they have now funded over 2,600 markers across 49 states. Here in Sodus, we are grateful to the foundation that has awarded us multiple markers in the last year. We appreciate the assistance we received from Christy Kuhn in the application process and Zach Finn in researching and locating required documentation needed for the veterans. In addition, Sons of the American Revolution member Tim Middlebrook spent hours locating the burial papers and pension papers required as proof to qualify for the markers. Locally, former SAR member Darrell Verstrate was a valuable resource because of his past research of our local patriots. Okay, and now Sandy Hopkins, our Town of Sodus historian, will give a little bit of the history about this cemetery. Oh yes.
Yay!
Thank you. Oh really? I didn't get any of that.
Well, you'll get it at the end.
Get it all right.
I was trying to find history of the cemetery, but the history of the cemetery is more the people that are in it than the property, because the property has always been here, so it's more the people that are put in it. It's more the history, and there's a lot of important people in here. So, but anyways, the property was originally owned by Dr. Levi Gaylord's family. Then the property became owned by Orrin Gaylord, the son of Dr. Levi and Artemisia Gaylord. The first person buried here was Theodotus Merriman Gaylord. She is down that way. If you go down Lilac Way, you'll find her monument. It's tall and it's kind of brownish in color.
See it?
She was the first wife of Dr. Levi Gaylord. They were married in 1822. Their only child, son, Dr. Levi Marion Gaylord, he was 5 months old when his mother died.
Well, that'll make for an interesting video. Wow, that was interesting.
Don't be talking about Levi anymore.
He didn't like us talking about him.
Later on, the front section to the north was owned by Dan and Deborah Mills. In the honor of their son Ellen Mills, who worked here for years taking care of the cemetery, they donated that front property, which nobody's buried in, and they put the excess dirt from burials there that is donated to the cemetery by the Mills. There's an empty lot up here on this end of the cemetery, which is not owned by the cemetery, but originally it was a junkyard owned by Bill Levis. And Jim Norton said he remembers his Tom Farrell playing in the old cars back when they were young. So if you want to dig over there, there's probably some old cars buried underneath there. And the other little tidbit I found was the entrance down there that you'll see. There's a gate off of 88 that nobody can go through. It's blocked off. That was called Sodus Avenue. U-N-D-E-N Avenue. Yeah, Linden Avenue. I don't know if it was ever used. It might have been back in the days. It might have been the only entrance to the cemetery at that time. But so those are the tidbits I found on the cemetery itself. There's a lot of tidbits about the people in here, but that's another whole day.
Another day.
Yeah.
Another day.
Another dollar.
I remember that gate being open and being able to get through there.
Well, only because I spent 2 hours doing this, if I can keep reading this. Excuse me, before I begin, I just want to extend my thanks to Bruce Farrington for much of the information that I will be sharing. There is also much information about the Fitzhugh family online on several internet sites. So, Colonel Peregrine William Fitzhugh. He was born May 20th, 1759 in Kelber County, Maryland. His first name came from his mother's family. His mother was Anne Peregrine Frisbee Fitzhugh, and his maternal grandfather was Peregrine Frisbee. His father, Colonel William Fitzhugh, this is so much fun, was in the English Army but resigned his commission rather than fight against the colonists. And that act of defiance found favor with many of our founding fathers, such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Unfortunately, to punish him, that would be Peregrine's father, William's plantation was heavily damaged by the British and 50 of his slaves were stolen. The Fitzhughs, by the way, were one of the first families of Virginia, a group of early settler families who became a socially and politically dominant group in the British colony of Virginia, later called the Commonwealth of Virginia. Woo! Here it goes. In 1777, Peregrine enlisted in the Virginia Continental Army in the 3rd Regiment of Dragoons at the age of 18 as a lieutenant, and he was soon promoted to captain. On the night of September 27th, it's too dark cold, 1778, Peregrine was captured at the Baylor Massacre at Old Tappan, New Jersey. The British had secretly attacked and killed 67 of his fellow soldiers, and Peregrine was one of the 37 lucky ones. He was held prisoner for 2 years on Long Island until his father ransomed his release by borrowing money from Charles Carroll, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. After he recovered on July 2nd, 1781, he became the aide-de-camp, or secretary, for General George Washington and was given the title of colonel. He held that post for 2 years. On December 11, 1781, Peregrine married Elizabeth Crowley Chew in Washington County, Maryland, and they had 10 children. 9 of the children were born in Maryland. Elizabeth's father gave them several thousand acres of land in Anne Arundel, Maryland, and a promise of support. But Elizabeth's father died in 1786, and Peregrine, despite his best efforts, became heavily in debt. To rid himself of the debts, he decided to sell his land. He came up with a scheme of selling 500 lottery tickets for his property and some lesser prizes. He tried to sell a lottery ticket to his old commanding officer, General Washington, and the writing of that letter caused him great embarrassment. Peregrine's father died in February 1798, and he had also been heavily in debt due to the damage to his plantation and the money he had borrowed to get his son released. As a result, Peregrine and his brother William decided to sell that plantation and move to the new frontier in upstate New York to start all over again. In 1799, Peregrine and his extended family packed up everything, including their slaves, and moved by a caravan of large wagons pulled by 27 horses. They eventually arrived in Geneva, where their 10th child was born. His brother William later moved to Rochesterville, and Peregrine bought land in Troopville, later called Sodus Point. The land was cheap and fertile, but covered with a thick forest. It took 3 years to clear enough land and build their home on a hill overlooking the bay, which was called, as you all probably know, Sodus by the Indians, meaning silvery waters, now called Sodus Bay. Because of the thick forest, building a new plantation never happened, but Peregrine and Elizabeth were content with their surroundings. To make ends meet, they hired out their slaves as laborers, which had been a legal practice in the 19th century. By the end of 1807, Peregrine foresaw trouble making its way to them. Peregrine had kept in touch with Washington and Jefferson over the years. Their letters often included political discussions. In December 1807, Peregrine wrote to President Jefferson of his suspicion that another war was going to happen, and Sodus Bay would be a natural target for an invasion of the British. He asked for additional muskets and ammunition so that the citizens could defend themselves, but Jefferson did not send them. We all know about the War of 1812 and Sodus Point in 1813. Peregrine passed away on November 28, 1811. His wife, Elizabeth, granted freedom to the slaves, and they started a community called the Maxwell Settlement, which was on the east side of North Geneva Road, across from the Sager House restaurant. Peregrine was originally buried in Sodus Point, but his remains were moved here and are located on Iris Way. That direction. Streets in Sodus Point, as you probably know, were named after Peregrine, North Fitzhugh and South Fitzhugh Streets. The end.
Thank you. I'm using you as a shield.
I know. Trying to keep warm, aren't you?
The other patriot that is buried here, of which we are aware, is Simeon Kent. And Simeon Kent, in the early days, came from Long Island. He moved to East Palmyra. He was a soldier in both the Revolutionary War, in which he served in the 1st Regiment of New Jersey, and he fought here against the British in the Battle of Sodus Point in 1813 during the War of 1812. According to Lewis Clark's book about the military history of Wayne County, Mr. Kent served in the military during most of the Revolutionary War. Even though he lived in Palmyra, he spent his last days in his daughter's home on the Shaker Tract. He died there at the age of 89. On January 21st, 1851, and was buried in this cemetery. Even though there is not a lot of information about his life, it is interesting to note that his descendants played a large part in our local history. Simeon and his wife, Sarah Jane, had 5 children. Their sons Louis, Elias, Jeremiah, Lawrence, and daughter Sarah. At least 2 of those children were the reason he had strong ties to Sodus and the prominent families here. His daughter was the wife of Stephen Nelson Hopkins Sr. In 1832, Stephen built and operated the mill on Christian Holler. The Hopkins had 7 children, including 2 sons, who were well-known businessmen in the village of Sodus. Their son Benjamin, Simeon's grandson, was a Great Lakes captain for many years. In 1865, Ben followed in his father's footsteps when he built and operated the Champion Roller Mills that was located where the village parking lot is now. He also built a resort area in Sodus Point, and it was called Santiago de Sodus Point on Sodus Bay, later the site of Arnie's Marina, which included several buildings. A couple of these buildings included bedrooms that were built in the trees.
Huh.
In the early 1900s, 2 of Ben's sons, Fred and Byron, or By as he was called, they were Simeon's great-grandsons, again carried on the family tradition when they built and operated the B.A. Sons Mill halfway down Mill Street, where the teen center is now. After the brothers died, By's son George, Simeon's great-grandson, operated the mill until 1954. Do we remember that? I must be that.
5.
Another of Simeon's grandsons, Sarah and Stephen's son William, owned a house at 19 Mill Street, where he operated a bakery. Years later, William's foster daughter, Minnie Granger, sold ice cream and operated the bakery out of the front of the house. And I was told that by Minnie's daughter, Mabel, many years ago. The 1904 map of Sodus labels the entire area of the west side of Grove Street owned by the Hopkins brothers, including Fred Hopkins' house, which was built in 1890 on the corner of Mill and Grove Street.
That's her house.
In other words, a fair amount of the land on Mill Street and Grove Street was owned by Simeon's descendants. In the early days, there were many connections among the Sodus families through marriage. Not only did Simeon and Sarah Jane's daughter marry Stephen Hopkins, but their son Louis married Rhoda, or Rhodey Hopkins, who was Stephen Hopkins' sister. Remember, not as many people around then. So if I've confused you with all the family connections, suffice it to say, there would have been some big holes in our local history without Simeon and Sarah Kent and their descendants. Today we honor Simeon Kent and are grateful for his service in both the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812.
Pump, pump.
What's next? Okay, we have to unveil the marker.
There we go. Batten down the hatches.
Well, this got to stay on. Hopefully that's okay there.
Here we go. We're moving. We're moving.